Here we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Welcome into another edition of another Dolphins podcast. We are shaking off the rust. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the agenda. It's Wednesday. You'll listen to this on Thursday. You know the drill by now. Merrick Brave, Joshua Houtz, gentlemen. Welcome back from the bye. How we feeling?
We're feeling rested, feeling ready to kick off the second half of this season for the Miami Dolphins. Hopefully a good second half. I think the bye week was good to the Dolphins. And, you know, it's always good when you see the Buffalo Bills lose, which they did on Monday Night Football to the Denver Broncos, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember this Miami Dolphins team beating those Denver Broncos 70-20. So no excuses, Bills fans. We're tired of them. But as far as I'm going, it's nice. It's a nice day in Iowa today. How about yourself, Josh?
I definitely just muted myself after it was my turn to talk. I'm good. I say it every time, but every time we get to come on here and talk Dolphins football, I mean, we're joking about Tua's hair before this podcast. So it's just awesome that we can come on here every week and talk about the team we love. So I'm doing wonderful. Yeah, you got cornrows. Everyone sees it. By now, by the time you're listening to this podcast, you see the Tua new look. I guess he had a sleeve on his arm. He had a cap on at practice. No one knew it was under that cap, but lo and behold, it's some cornrows. So, like you said, Jake, the Raiders, they're about to get, 69 dropped on them? It's going to be an ugly, ugly day if you're a Raiders fan.
So he's got the cornrows, the sleeve. Do you think the sleeve is because he got some stuff added to the tattoo?
Swag, probably just swag, right?
You don't think he added to the tattoo? You know, that's a very Samoan thing to do, is to keep adding on to the tribal tattoo. Maybe he got some work done during the bye.
I think
sticky fingers, go gadget.
Tinfoil hat worthy, but I like it. I like that idea.
I was gonna say it's Inspector Gadget. You got something that lets you catch a 100-mile-per-hour ball that's going to your right side with your one hand, right? And I think that's what you got done to that. Maybe you'll be able to catch some of those Connor Williams snaps with the game on the line. But I digress.
Too soon.
We have a loaded show today, guys. We're going to try to figure out what's on Chirs Grier's mind as he continues to work out different players. We're going to discuss how the defense might create some more turnovers in the second half. But gentlemen, as Joshua would say, we're going to get this road on the show by talking about this wide receiver group. Jaylen Waddle came out on Monday and just kind of talked about how important this bye week was. 9 weeks into the season, it came at the ideal time. So, gentlemen, I feel like we all kind of expected more from Jaylen Waddle this year, and understandably so. He's dealt with some injuries. I think oblique. He got rolled up on against the Chiefs because there wasn't an injury report last week, but if there was, I'm sure he would have been on it. He missed the game with a concussion, and I think I'm even missing one more injury on there.
Back injury, yeah.
Back injury. So, how do we feel about Jaylen Waddle's recovery, and if he's just absolutely going to take off to the moon in the second half of the season?
It sounds like Jaylen Waddle's been hanging out with Teron Armstead too much, because he needs to get the little Giants treatment.
Too soon.
Yeah, he needs to show up to these games wrapped in bubble wrap. I think if we're going to keep Jaylen Waddle healthy, hopefully, like you said there, Jake, hopefully this bye week was at the perfect time for him. He's able to get rested, recovered, and hopefully he can avoid the injury bug for the rest of the season. You know, people are saying it's a little bit of a down year for Jaylen Waddle, but with the litany of injuries you just listed off, why wouldn't it be? It's hard to fight through some of that stuff. And we've already talked about how cautious this regime is with injuries. So they're going to sit you if you're not feeling quite up to the task. So Jaylen Waddle did miss a game. He's been in and out of a couple others. So the stats are a little bit down. Now he's still on pace for over 1,000 yards this year. And you have to think maybe some more attention is going to be paid to Tyreek Hill over these last few games, seeing what he did this first half of the season. So maybe that opens things up for Jaylen Waddle a little bit. Maybe that allows him to kind of get back to the Jaylen Waddle that we all know and love that he has been his first couple of years in the National Football League. But time will certainly tell, but he's got to get healthy first.
He does, and it is an unfortunate season for him. I mean, we talked about it in the offseason. He got stronger, right? Got bigger. We thought, adding on that muscle, does that maybe make him play a little bit more reckless? And maybe that's why he's getting banged up. I don't know, but not having Jaylen Waddle out there is definitely not ideal for this offense. Looks like he caught 59 passes for 522 yards and 3 touchdowns. when you compare that to Tyreek Hill, it's 1,076 yards. I mean, Tyreek has double the number of yards he has, over double the touchdowns, and he missed Jaylen Waddle technically one game. So you want to see him out there. You want to see him build upon that year we had last season. And again, when Jaylen Waddle's working, when he's healthy, working on all cylinders, I mean, this offense is hard to stop. So we need to get Jaylen Waddle back and healthy as soon as we can. Hopefully that's this week against the Raiders, as it sounds. But not the best season for Jaylen Waddle. Not what we expected anyway as Dolphin fans.
You know me, big math guy. Dolphins have played 9 games. Waddle's been active for 8 of them. At 522 yards. Merrick, I set the over-under at 1,100 yards. Does Waddle surpass it?
Oh, that's tough. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things you can take into consideration there. I think if he stays healthy, he probably does pass that, but he's just dealing with a lot right now. Devon Achane coming back to the game this weekend, and Mike McDaniel might be more inclined to call a few more runs, and that certainly wouldn't help pad Waddle's stats here. So, controversial, but I think I'm going to take the under. I think I'm taking the under of 1,100 yards for Jaylen Waddle.
If he hit that under, Josh, would that disappoint you?
What was it, 1,100?
Yeah.
Is that what he said? I don't know that I'd be disappointed, because if he's missing it, it's only by a little, right? I mean, he's probably pretty damn close to that 1,000-yard mark as it stands. So I won't be disappointed. But again, you expected more out of him. I'm looking at the targets here, and he has doubled the targets as the next guy in line, which is Braxton Berrios. So between Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, I mean, those are your 1-2 punch. And when that second punch isn't really hitting as hard as it has in years past, it's just not the same. So I think I'm going to go with the over, though. You didn't ask me. I'm going to say he goes over that, but I won't be upset if he went under, unless we're looking at what? He has 522 right now. He gets up to 700. Then he's missed probably a couple more games, and then I would be a little bit upset. But I think Jaylen Waddle is going to hit over 1,000 yards. And can we factor in some of these playoff games, right? If you factored in the playoff game, I'm going to say easily over 1,100.
It's interesting to see how Waddle's season has gone. Early in the year, he was averaging 5-6 targets. He really ballooned against the Giants with 10 targets. At home against the Patriots, 12 targets, and then 6 in Germany. We mentioned it. He was dealing with that injury. His 3 games with the highest targets, actually, the more I look at it, breaking math on the spot, Miami's 3 home games so far this year, he's had at least 9 targets, 9, 10, and 12. Everything else has been 5 or 6. So right there, right away, tells me, Merrick, I'm going to go against you a little bit. I think Sunday might be a Waddle game. I think they're actually going to be the safest with Devon Achane. I think you're looking at Baltimore late in the season. You're looking at Buffalo. That's when you want Achane. I think the offense is might still just try to lean them in 5, 10 carries, something like that. It'll disappoint a lot of people. But man, Waddle at home is a bet that I think I'm talking myself into as we speak.
Yeah. And, flip a coin here, over, under. I hope he goes over as well. I love Jaylen Waddle. I think he's a great player. And I think this team is much better when he's firing on all cylinders. Again, it's just going to come down to health with him, especially this season. So, I mean, fingers crossed that he gets healthy, stays healthy, contributes to this offense. This offense, it's I don't want to say it's stalled over the last few weeks, but it's not where it was earlier in the season. So they had a bye week to kind of work out some of these kinks a little bit, get Achane back, and maybe focus a little bit more on Waddle and stop force feeding the ball to Tyreek Hill, which would only probably piss off Hill, since his goal is to hit the 2,000-yard mark. And he's, right now I think he's projected for like 2,036 or something like that. So it's getting close. It's getting close to that 2,000 mark, and he's going to want his target. So we'll see if there's any contention there if some of these balls start going to Waddle. I doubt it. Tyreek Hill seems like a great teammate. So yeah, I mean, over under, like I said, I hope he goes over as well. I think I was just trying to be a contrarian because I knew y'all were going to go over.
Josh, you brought up an interesting. Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. We're not doing the nod thing. You go ahead. What were you gonna say? Let's hear this interesting point.
So yesterday, I wrote an article for the Finsider about the Dolphins activating River Cracraft, and I didn't read my title over it, and I just put River Craft has been activated, and I really wanted to leave it because it would have actually kind of made sense. But before I get into some wide receiver 3 talk, Josh, did you have a final Waddle point?
I honestly don't remember what I was going to say. I think I was going to try to transition into this wide receiver 3 talk. So that's perfect, Jake. Let's talk about wide receiver 3.
We're just running in circles, and I love it. Welcome to another Dolphins podcast. Josh, you brought up an interesting point there, talking about Waddle, how he's had 59 targets on the year. Next up for the Dolphins, Braxton Berrios has 25. So, guys, what do you think happens in the second half of the season at wide receiver 3? Now, I know this isn't the most exciting position to talk about, but Merrick, you said it. The offense hasn't been too great in recent weeks. It's looked very awkward, and I think part of that is because they don't have that third comfortable option at receiver. Against the Chiefs, Cedric Wilson was targeted 5 times. He only caught 1 of those passes. Braxton Berrios didn't have a single target. River Cracraft, he was averaging 4, 5, 6 targets early in the season before he got hurt against the Denver Broncos. All of Ced Wilson's targets came after that week. So, guys, is a wide receiver 3 potentially what this Miami Dolphins offense needs to just feel a little more comfortable, maybe not score 70, but look a little less awkward than a high school or you can go a middle school dance?
Well, that's the thing about this Dolphins offense. I don't think you're ever going to get a solidified wide receiver 3. They're going to be moving guys in and out. I think Cracraft coming back is actually a big thing for this offense. Not necessarily in the receiving department, though. I think he is the best blocking receiver on this team, and it could actually help, get this run game back on track a little bit, help Achane when he comes back too. But also, he can block on some of these wide receiver screens to Waddle and to Hill as well. So I think the Cracraft, addition, him coming back is huge for this offense. Again, maybe not necessarily as a receiver. I think Braxton Berrios can be used, and he can step up and get some of these third down grabs, these move the chains type receptions. He's not going to be catching 20, 25-yard bombs, from Tua here, but he can do some more. I'd like to see Chase Claypool get a little bit more run here. He's been down the last couple seasons in Chicago, but his rookie year in Pittsburgh and his second year in Pittsburgh, he was a weapon. He was an offensive weapon, and he can be used in a lot of different ways, and his blocking has also been pretty good. So I'd like to see him get a little bit more involved as he continues to get more comfortable with this, very challenging, very difficult to learn offense. He had an off week, a bye week here to work on some things. Now, I did just see on Twitter that he didn't practice today. Neither did Braxton Berrios. So we'll have to see what's going on with those two. But I think for me personally, I really would like to see Chase Claypool get involved in it. And if he can contribute in the pass game and the run game, with his big frame, he can be a
big
an end
slot.
zone. Yeah, there you go. Big slot. Move all over the field. I don't care where you line up. Line up in the backfield. Take some of those Debo carries that we've been looking for ever since the Dolphins hired Mike McDaniel. And he's just a big body that you can use in the red zone, in the end zone. I liked Cedric Wilson's one catch he had in Kansas City because it was for a touchdown. And it was a ball that Tua just kind of threw it up there and said, hey, 50-50 ball, go up and get it, said. And Claypool's bigger than Cedric Wilson is. So, he can go up there and win some of those contested catches. So for me personally, let's get Claypool involved. I'd like to unlock some of his potential.
Yeah, I won't mind seeing that vending machine out there catching passes, but I think you kind of touched on it, Jake. I mean, River Cracraft, what he brings to the table, it's all those little things, right? The blocking, he has this offense down to a T. He's almost like an extra coach out in the field, but I think it's going to be Cedric Wilson that we see start to kind of emerge. I don't know what it is between him and Tua Tagovailoa. I think he might have worked with that Perform, right, in the summertime. Maybe they got some extra reps in there. I think Ced earned the nickname Ced the Onion Head or whatever, but I feel like these last few weeks you've really seen him start to come out, prove that he can, be an asset, whether it be catching those passes in the red zone, doing some of that grit work, like making those blocks in the run game. So I don't know who it's going to be. I'm going to put my money on maybe Cedric Wilson. I know it won't be Robbie Chosen, right? As painful as that is to say, it won't be Robbie Chosen. I'd love to see the vending machine Chase Claypool step up, but the way things are starting to go, I think it might be Cedric Wilson's time to earn some of that money. I mean, I'd hope to be Braxton Berrios, but you look at that difference in the targets between Waddle and Hill and then down to Berrios. I mean, even Durham Smythe, when you're looking at the targets, has a chance to kind of push for more targets as the season progresses, but we want someone to step up. And after these last few weeks, I'm going to put my money on Ced the Onion Head.
Who called him a vending machine? That got
Tyreek.
me.
Definitely Tyreek.
What an awesome way to describe a wide receiver. What an interesting dynamic for wide receiver 3, because I do think it's going to be important down the stretch. Braxton Berrios, has been dealing with a couple injuries himself, so I think that plays a role. Josh, you foreshadowed it a little bit. So the Dolphins now have 7 wide receivers on the active roster. Devon Achane's about to come back, and I think this could maybe be the end for a fan favorite receiver. I'm not entirely sure, but I think this might be farewell for Robbie Chosen.
I was gonna let Merrick talk. Merrick, you want to get in on this? I know you haven't. You
Well-
never thought his Space Ranger visor and those cool dreads. You never were. That never got you excited, but I can't say the same for me.
No, I was excited for his speed, and I thought he was another guy who could stretch the field, but it just hasn't really clicked for him, and he hasn't been active for a number of games, and even when he was, he hasn't been used. I don't know if you have his stats up there on the screen there, Jake, but he's being paid a little bit of coin here to do nothing, to not catch footballs, at least not catch footballs from Tua Tagovailoa. He does have the 1 touchdown on the year, but that came from Mike White in garbage time against the Broncos. Actually, most of that game was just garbage time. Great garbage time, though. We loved watching that. But yeah, Robbie Chosen, I don't think he's going to be long for the Miami Dolphins. Like you said it, Jake, it's a numbers game. 7 receivers. You're not going to carry that for the rest of the season. And if these guys are starting to get healthy and you get somebody like Cracraft back like they just did today, I think Robbie Chosen is going to be on the outs sooner than later.
I don't know what you want me to say. You want me to shed a tear? I've been through Preston Williams, Isaiah Ford. We can deal with Robbie Chosen being kicked to the curb. I mean, I did raise my eyebrow when you say he's getting paid. I mean, isn't he making like minimum to do? Basically, he has the same numbers as Chase Claypool. They both have 2 catches, except Robbie Chosen had a touchdown. Let's not forget that. But I mean, could he fall in the practice squad? Could he not be a guy that maybe they see something in that, in case we're in this situation again a couple weeks down the road, which knock on wood, we're not in that situation, but based on the way these first few weeks have gone, we might need help later in the season. But I think when Robbie Chosen first came here, we knew that it was an uphill battle for him, but we were hoping, at least I was hoping, and I got that 1 touchdown and to see him wear that visor. So I'm a happy guy.
Point. So Braxton Berrios is 3rd on the team with 25 targets. Raheem Mostert is 4th with 24. Durham Smythe has 22. And then there's Salvan Ahmed with 20. Gentlemen, as we wrap up
No, that
here,
can't be true. Really?
Bananas. Jeff Wilson has 7 targets in 3 games. I'd like to speak to a manager about that one. But who ends the season with the 3rd most targets on the Miami Dolphins? Real quick, around the circle.
I'm going to go Braxton Berrios.
We're going targets?
Yep.
He's at what? Are we going damn. I was going to throw out Devon Achane, but I don't think that can be. So I'll go Cedric Wilson. It's going to be Braxton Berrios, though. But we do got to give him credit because he made some clutch, there were a couple clutch catches he made early in the season. You just hope to see more of that and less of him dating different TikTok stars or Instagram models or whatever the hell I get tagged in all the time on Twitter.
Yeah, he was one of the sexiest men alive, right? Sexiest athletes alive, right?
But I don't know the difference between these Alexes. They're 4th, yeah. He's
he just looks like a middle school social studies teacher.
That's what I'm
gonna be contrary. Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe is somehow in the league leading offense. Durham Smythe is gonna finish 3rd in targets.
Oh, I thought you were saying who the sexiest Miami Dolphin was.
I think Durham Smythe deserves that.
He's handsome.
He's true grit. He's what you need.
Better than Mike Gesicki. Is he better than Mike Gesicki? Can we confirm that? Move on. That's crazy.
I'm gonna go with Jaylen Waddle. He's so smooth.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, are we talking about 3rd in targets again? Are you saying we're talking handsome?
Yeah, I think Jaylen Waddle.
I'm going Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips has to be up there.
You like that? Yeah. He's got 47 abs.
Gentlemen, the Miami Dolphins have a -4 turnover differential through 9 games. Will that be negative by the time the season ends with 8 games left on the schedule?
No. This defense is rounding into form. We've only seen 1 game where Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard played together. I think that is the key to getting more turnovers on this defense. Both of those guys are ball hawks. Both of those guys can get interceptions, which is what makes that perfect, right? Because if you got Jalen Ramsey on one side and then you force feed the ball to the other side, Xavier can nab the ball out of the air, get an interception. conversely, if you see Xavier Howard locking somebody up and you throw it to the other side, Jalen Ramsey's over there. He can grab an interception himself. Kader Kohu might benefit from that. Javon Holland might benefit from that. This defense in particular is pretty darn good at getting to the quarterback. We could see some strip sacks, some more forced fumbles. Bradley Chubb has a forced fumble in like a couple consecutive games here now, and he's looking real good. I think this defense is about to go kind of crazy on some lesser than opponents. You got the Raiders coming up, you got the Jets coming up, you got the Commanders, who Sam Howell gets sacked at a higher rate than any quarterback in the league right now. Then you got the Titans, who are starting a rookie quarterback, and then back to the Jets. And we know that Zach Wilson just, it can be a turnover machine at times. Although I saw a stat, he's only thrown one interception in like his last 6 games or something like that. That might've been before this past weekend. But I think this defense rounding into form at the perfect time is going to force a lot of turnovers. And I think the Dolphins are going to be, a little bit better in that department. I think Tua is going to clamp down a little bit on that. Probably doesn't like the amount of interceptions he's throwing. And I think they can climb back to even here pretty soon and then finish the year with a positive margin in the turnover department.
Yeah, we're probably going to go on one of those streaks like we had with Josh Boyer around. Wasn't there like a 21-game takeaway streak or something crazy we had there for a little while? So I think you're both right. My answer was going to be if Bradley Chubb has any say in this, we're going to, right? This dude's been playing out of his mind. I think that's what kind of got Jake and I really excited about talking about this. 40 total tackles this year. He has a 6 sacks, his own pace to have his better season than he did his rookie year. And he's playing at that level. That's making everybody else next to him play an insane level. You got Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer always making plays. Jalen Phillips, like we were gushing about. David Long Jr. is playing out of his mind. We can sit here and list all the pieces on defense, but I think what we're going to see over these next few weeks is kind of a battle between the offense and defense to see, I guess you can't really say the identity of this team, but which unit wants to go into the, I keep saying playoffs and I got to stop that. I got to stop bringing up playoffs. Who wants to go into the end of the season, playing their best football, because it started out, the offense was red hot. Now the defense is starting to catch up. You see Vic Fangio getting all his little chess pieces back. That total is definitely going to be in the positive. And I think we're going to see a long streak of games now where the Dolphins get a turnover, whether it be a Bradley Chubb strip sack, a Javon Holland interception, whatever it might be, because defenses aren't ready for what they're about to see.
Josh, you could say playoffs. I saw an ESPN graphic right before we started recording.
Oh, this is even worse. I know what you're going to say. This is so bad.
It says the Miami Dolphins have a 95% chance to make the playoffs and an 85% chance to win the AFC East and a 21% chance to win the Super Bowl.
See, those
process.
I believe those things. Every time you see them and it's a negative thing, you're like, oh, they're full of shit. But you see this and you hear that, you're like, okay, I believe all this.
These guys are smart.
Makes me feel queasy. I do like that Mike McDaniel has press conference today, though. I think they were talking about the playoffs, and he just basically said, we're not looking at the playoffs. We're looking at winning the AFC East and playing multiple games. So it's just different times as a Dolphins fan. But I can't feel anything more than Joe Philbin queasy bringing up the playoffs. At least, week 11? We're headed into week 11 now? Raiders game?
Already.
Bradley Chubb's been so fun to watch because you think about it. It's not super complicated. If you're a quarterback and you see Xavier Howard or Jalen Ramsey now out there, you're going to hesitate for half a second. And that half a second means the ball is in your hands. And where is Bradley Chubb coming from? The blind side. And all of a sudden, that's where he has his 4 forced fumbles from. That's been so impressive to watch. Merrick, Chubb leads the team with 6 sacks, but it's really like a 4, 5, 6, player race here. Wilkins has 4.5, AVG at 4, Sealer 4, Jalen Phillips at 3.5, who leads the team in sacks come the end of the year.
I really do think it's Bradley Chubb. I really like where he's at right now. I really like the way he's been playing. I think, again, we go back to Jalen Ramsey coming back to this team and Xavier Howard being healthy now. If these guys can stay healthy, these coverage sacks will be a thing for this defensive line. They're already pressuring quarterbacks at an extremely high rate. They're hitting quarterbacks at an extremely high rate. They're sacking quarterbacks at an extremely high rate. And that's only going to continue as this defense gets healthy and this secondary starts clamping things down. And again, like I mentioned, they're going against some lesser than quarterbacks coming up here. You got Aiden O'Connell as a rookie. You got Zach Wilson, who plays like a middle schooler. I think it looks and plays like a middle schooler. You got Will Levis, who, he's been looking pretty decent out there, but still a rookie. And then you got Sam Howell, who admittedly having a pretty good season, but gets sacked a lot. So I think they're just really going to be able to kind of do whatever they want on defense here. And I think Bradley Chubb is going to continue to get these numbers in the stat sheet. I think he will lead this team in sacks when it's all said and done.
Sam Howell does have a nice visor, though. We got to make sure we bring that up. Any quarterback with a visor is A-okay in my book.
Leads the league in passing yards, I think, too.
Yeah, something crazy like that. He's got some nice weapons. I like the Commanders. They're going to probably change their name soon. Not to get sidetracked here. Okay, you said Bradley Chubb. That's probably the easy money. I was going to say Jalen Phillips, but I think that might be a cop-out. So I'm going to go crazy here and say Christian Wilkins. He wants those sacks to get that money. 4.5 right now. When you're a quarterback and you see Jalen Phillips on one end and Bradley Chubb on the other, what's the first thing you're going to do? Try to step up, right? So let's go with Christian Wilkins. Well, you're probably praying coming into this game, right? You're just, please let me get through these 3 hours and not get sandwiched like Bryce Petty did when Sue and Wake destroyed him. So we'll go with Christian Wilkins. I mean, I know that's a long shot based on everything we know, but 4.5 sacks already. So hell with it, man. He's going to get 10, and then they're going to have to, again, that contract could be massive. They have so many people they have to pay. Happy podcast. We'll talk about that when the season's over, which won't be until February.
We'll see you in March.
Yeah, March. We're going to the parade if it happens.
Josh, so what would that sack total be for Wilkins? We kind of feel that this Dolphins defense is starting to pick up the pace, so I think the numbers are going to improve where you could kind of say they're going to kind of lap what they did in the first half of the season. So if Christian Wilkins does lead the team in sacks, I do think it'd be kind of spread out pretty wide. I think AVG would even be flirting around 10. So would Sealer, but what would that amount be for Wilkins?
Yeah, I said 10. It would have to be more than that, just based on, Bradley Chubb's going to have 10 in the next, few weeks. So we'll go 12.5. 12.5 for Wilkins. That sounds absolutely insane. I realize how crazy my prediction was, but yeah, sure.
Nice. Heavy on the YOLO. I like it.
YOLO.
Merrick, I'm putting you on the spot here. The Dolphins have 2 cornerbacks that have interceptions. Who are they?
2 cornerbacks with interceptions. I'm going to go Jalen Ramsey because he has the one against the Patriots. And then
You almost just said the second one too, because it was also one against the Patriots, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, interesting. I can't remember. I'm going to go Eli Apple.
Xavier Howard, man.
Wasn't Cam Smith. We know that.
Too soon. Merrick, there is one linebacker that has 1 interception. Who is it?
That's going to be Jerome Baker.
Nailed it. Merrick, there is 1 defensive lineman who has an interception. Who is it?
Zach Sealer.
Emmanuel Agba.
He's got those big paws.
I hate when he does those questions. He just nailed it with 4 of them. Damn. That's like old Stanford test.
That is to prove that the Dolphins only have 4 interceptions so
far
this season. And that kind of speaks to how they're losing the turnover battle. I think the interceptions has been the most surprising thing. So, guys, who leads this league, or they might lead the league, who leads the team in interceptions by year's end?
I'm going to go with Xavier Howard. I think if opposing quarterbacks are forced to pick their poison between throwing it at Ramsey or throwing it at Howard, they're going to test Howard more, and I think that's going to lead to him getting his hands on some balls at a higher rate than Jalen Ramsey.
I mean, I think that's what I said on one of the earlier podcasts that we did way back when, was that he was going to be, I think I even said defensive player of the year, because everyone's going to be trying to avoid Jalen Ramsey. So since you said Xavier Howard, then I got to say something else. I'm going to go with Emmanuel Agba. I'm kidding. I'm going to go with, we'll go with Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey's going to lead the team in interceptions. That's not really a hot take. I wish I had something better than that. Cater Kohu.
I got you. So the thing here is, you instantly want to say Howard or Ramsey, especially because I just mentioned them, right? But they only have 1 interception. Someone can have 2 interceptions and instantly be leading the team. That's why I think it's going to be Javon Holland. The amount he's playing in the slot, the amount he's playing in the box, he is about to shatter his career highs in both of those, where I think having Jalen Ramsey back, having a healthy Jalen Phillips who's going to get his sacks, I think all these guys just help Javon Holland be that absolute playmaker. He's going to be like Mario, looking like a rainbow, running around, knocking over every shell, knocking over every Goomba. This is going to be Javon Holland's defense. He has 3 forced fumbles. I think those all came against Denver, but I think where he helps this team win the turnover battle, is getting some interceptions. Zach Wilson, Aiden O'Connell. Those sound like some names that Javon Holland can catch a pass or two from.
Yeah. I think Aiden O'Connell, I think he throws 2 interceptions this week. I think he does.
The Dolphins defense.
Yeah. I think the Dolphins are going to come out like a team possessed against the Raiders. The Raiders, they got a nice little story going, right? They fire Josh McDaniels. Antonio Pierce, former player, comes in. He's being everybody's buddy and yada, yada, yada. I think this is the week where that Cinderella story goes off the rails. I think that carriage turns back into a pumpkin, and I think the Miami Dolphins put a hurting on them. They're coming to South Florida, traveling across the country, playing, in the heat, and I really do think this rested, healthy Miami Dolphins team, they're going to show the rest of the NFL that, again, the Raiders aren't a great team, but they're going to put the rest of the NFL on notice and say, hey, a lot of you guys buried us. You thought our season was over after a loss to the Chiefs. Maybe I got a little carried away myself, even, writing the eulogy for this team. But I do think they're about ready to get back on track. Tua's got the cornrows now. I think it's going to be a big victory for the Miami Dolphins over the Raiders this weekend.
Was he just laying himself up for a prediction? Shouldn't he just give his prediction at this point? That was a
prediction. Oh no, you cannot. Let us
I'm predicting 2 interceptions. That's my current prediction. 2 interceptions. Okay. I think Xavier's going to get one, and I'll go Holland gets his first interception of the year.
So the Raiders have been a nice feel good. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I have nothing to say.
The Raiders have won back-to-back games in impressive fashion, and that got me thinking. That got the hamster wheel going. The Dolphins had an interim coach recently that also won his first 2 games in impressive fashion. Man Campbell, I was actually at this game, beat the Titans 38-10, which was an absolute blast. Then they rocked Houston 44-26. That third game, Man Campbell, Ryan Tannehill and company lost 36-7 to the New England Patriots on the road. I think this might be that 36-7 game. I think the Raiders, it's a good feel good. I understand how much of a relief it is to have someone like Josh McDaniels out the door. But Merrick, I agree with you. I think this Dolphins team is too talented. They have their eyes on a bigger prize than just, hey, let's get this win so we can smoke a cigar, which again, I'm not hating. Very cool. I'm glad they got to do that because it looked like a lot of fun. And I wish I was there.
No, I think that's stupid. Smoking a cigar midway through the season because you want to get, that's dumb. Like, grow up. You guys are professionals. I saw that and I was like, what are you doing? That's silliness.
When after game would they been like casually smoke a cigar? How many hours would they have to leave the premises for the
You
cigar
can smoke a cigar all you want, but don't let anyone film you doing it. Because anyone who lets someone film them smoking a cigar looks like a douche.
Yeah. I mean, I did have that as a Facebook profile picture once. So I mean, yeah, I guess we're good here. Dude, Joshua, you got any cigar story?
No, just that every time I smoke them, I get sick because I think the way I inhale it, reminds you of something else. Like I'm Ricky Williams, and it just not good. I just start coughing and dying and
not supposed
get
to
a headache.
That.
Not the same stuff. Not good at it. No, that's my only story.
Before we wrap up here, guys, we heard earlier this week that the Miami Dolphins added Anthony Schwartz, a third wide receiver, to the practice squad. What we heard on Wednesday, Tuesday, one of the 2 days, depending on when it actually report. I think it was Tuesday. I think the report came out on Tuesday that the Miami Dolphins were trying out 3 safeties and 3 guards. So outside of the players that are coming in, because I think the goal of these players isn't, Anthony Schwartz isn't about Jaylen Waddle being injured. Adding a safety isn't because Brandon Jones is still struggling with his injury. I think these are just depth pieces. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. As you see Chirs Grier sniffing around these different players, how do you think he feels about the roster? And where do you think he sees the concerns where come late December, maybe early January, we need some guy to play 15 snaps. We need Lester Cotton to come in and be left guard. That type of mindset.
Yeah, I do think you're right on the other positions, but I think that guard spot is a little shaky right now with those injuries. Robert Jones got the knee issue. Robert Hunt's got the hamstring issue. They've said they're kind of day to day on those guys, week to week even. I don't think Rob Hunt plays this weekend. I do think there's a good chance he returns the following Friday, I believe. We're already at that Black Friday game coming up here pretty soon. That's wild. But I do think you want to get some offensive line pieces in there that you can feel good about if they were pressed into duty. I think Andrew Norwell was the big name on the guard list there. You know, many starts in the National Football League. So I wouldn't be too upset if they wanted to sign him to the practice squad. He's a break in case of emergency type player. But you never know, and you don't want an injury to one of your star players to derail the season. We were there last year. We felt that last year. And you know they've kind of worked their way through these injuries so far this season, but you got to have some reserves in there that can be used if needed. So I like that they're looking at the offensive linemen. I think with the safety spot, very important position in Vic Fangio's defense. They're probably not super happy with what they've gotten from a guy like Brandon Jones so far. Maybe looking for a type of guy that Jones really isn't, you know, maybe a guy that can get out there in coverage a little bit better than Brandon Jones can do. So we'll see if anything comes of that. But I guess my overall point with these tryouts is I like that they're still turning over stones. They're still trying to find pieces to add to the roster, put on the practice squad, and say, how can we get better? They're not being complacent. They're doing the work. They're putting the time and the effort in. And you like to see it as a fan of this team.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about Chirs Grier is the way he just continues, you know, throughout the entire year to try to continue to build on that roster, you know, try to bring in an Acorn that maybe, you know, just needs the right coaching and an Anthony Schwartz to maybe take that next level. So we'll see what happens. I do think you mentioned the offensive line. We absolutely need depth there. Defensive line, again, is a position that we've all been talking about, I think, since January about needing depth there. So I think Akeem Hicks was one of the guys that we've all talked about. I think he came out today. There's a report that a few teams were interested in him, but he didn't know if he was going to come back. So we'll see what happens. But the bye week is the week where you bring in these depth pieces and try to get better for that inevitable playoff push, which we're all hoping happens. So keep doing what you're doing, Chirs Grier. And, you know, maybe we'll see one of these Acorns playing a few snaps down the stretch.
Still, one of the most impressive parts about this Miami Dolphins season is the ability to keep Tua Tagovailoa's jersey clean for most of the game. Merrick, when you see that big Q next to Robert Jones and that big Q next to Robert Hunt, do you feel like you're approaching that point of the straw breaking the camel's back, or do you feel like left guard, right guard, at least short term, are two positions that you can maybe work around?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's kind of the thought process with guards, is that they're probably the easiest positions to replace on the offensive line, the left guard, the right guard spot. Hard to replace your tackles. Those guys are always in demand. Your center kind of has the most responsibility pre-snap of any position along the offensive line. So you want a guy in there who's really comfortable with the offense and comfortable calling out the protections and whatnot. So I think if you're going to, you know, suffer an injury on the offensive line, either one of those guard spots is where you want it to happen. Maybe not both of those guard spots. I really don't like having to walk into any game, even if it's a game against an opponent we think we can beat, like the Raiders. You don't like to walk into that game down two offensive linemen, both starting guards. So, you know, they were in that boat in Kansas City, and the backups actually performed pretty well in that spot. But you're hoping, at least in particular with Rob Hunt, that's not a long-term injury. If he does miss this one, he can be back for that Jets game the week after. They might be looking at that and thinking, okay, can we get through this Raiders game without exposing him to further injury potentially? Because we'd like to win that divisional matchup against the Jets, who are winning football games despite looking awful most of the time. And you're going to put a lot of that on their defense looking real good. So if you can get Rob Hunt back to go against that defensive line, a pretty good defensive line the New York Jets boast, then I think that's what we're keeping our fingers and toes crossed for.
Yeah. I was just going to say it sucks that we are without Rob Hunt because he's, again, arguably the best offensive lineman we have. But I do think if you're asking if you'd rather have both tackles missing or even your center, I think we can get by with the guards. At least, like Merrick said, we looked pretty well last week against Kansas City Chiefs.
It looks like it's going to be Liam Eichenberg at left guard and Lester Cotton at right guard. That's just kind of how the depth chart shakes out. It's actually interesting that they the Dolphins made a switch where Robert Jones is officially the starting left guard, and he will be when he's healthy. And they push Liam Eichenberg back. I think that's important. I think it is so important to have that backup center that you can trust in big moments. But guys, outside of Lester Cotton and Liam Eichenberg, there isn't a lot to work with there on the offensive line. Do you reach a point where you start when does your arm get twisted to the point that Kendall Lamb needs to come in as a guard? Because I kind of like keeping him as a tackle, but I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures, and a baby's got to do what a baby's got to do, right?
Well, they'll tell you we want to get the best 5 guys on the field at any given time. I think Kendall Lamb is in that boat, but I understand why they're not putting him out there. And honestly, I think Kendall Lamb is on record in saying that he doesn't want to play left guard because he doesn't feel like he can play it effectively. I think he feels like he's a tackle, in particular a left tackle. And we've seen that so far this year when he's been pressed into duty because of the myriad of injuries that Teron Armstead has been suffering. He's looked good. He's played pretty well at the left tackle spot. So again, if you put him out there at left guard, you risk exposing him to injury. And then what happens when Teron Armstead gets injured again? And now you're scrambling to try to coach up either Austin Jackson to get back over on the left side or Keon Smith. And both of those things sound not good in my mind. So I think for right now, I'm comfortable with Eichenberg at left guard. Never thought I'd say that, but and comfortable with Cotton at right guard. But if you suffer another injury to either of those spots, then you might be looking at Kendall Lamb and saying, listen, I don't give a crap what you want to do. We're going to need you to play one of these spots this week because we're in a dire position here.
Yeah, you reading over that depth chart got me queasy, and you just wonder if we're going to get off here and there's going to be a signing to, Andrew Norwell or whoever it might be that they just worked out, because that does sound a little bit break in case of emergency if we have to move Kendall Lamb inside. And let's be honest, at this point, he might be the long-term answer at left tackle with Teron Armstead, the way he's been banged up and the way he's been playing. So let's hope we get healthy, because that is not – who's that, Kendall Lamb?
I think he's like 31.
He's not a spring chicken.
Yeah.
Those guys can play for a while, though.
So he's even older than Teron Armstead is what you're saying. Oh, God. That's not good, right? Oh, it's Teron Armstead. Teron Armstead's 32. Okay, so if Teron Armstead was that franchise left tackle, then Kendall Lamb can be too, right? I mean, we were going to rely on Teron Armstead for what, 3 or 4 years? Yeah,
at a much cheaper cost, too.
Well, it was. Kendall Lamb's going to cost a little bit more now after this season.
They're just going to be playing this podcast, obviously.
Just guys, basically sounds like our offensive line is in shambles. We're going to be screwed on the offensive line with everybody. Oh, we're doomed.
Envision it. Austin Jackson at left guard, Julian Hill starting right tackle as the blind side for Tua.
What are we doing? What's happening now?
That I think would be the panic. Yeah, I think it'd have to be one of the tight ends to come in to be a worst case scenario. But all right, we can't talk too much about that. We're going to take one more break, and on the other side, we're going to get Merrick's prediction for the game. All right, Merrick, the moment we've all been waiting for, 42 minutes and 34 seconds into the podcast. How we feeling about Sunday? And more importantly, how are the young ones feeling?
I'm feeling good. Young ones are feeling good too. I'll go with my prediction, my game score first. I touched on it a little bit earlier in this pod, but I feel really confident going into this game against the Raiders. Like maybe scarily confident. Like maybe this is going to backfire because I feel so confident. But I think you're looking at probably a 38-10 victory for the Miami Dolphins, a game where they're comfortably leading and you don't see Tua, Tyreek, Jaylen, Raheem. You don't see those guys for most of the fourth quarter. I think they get pulled, and I think we're getting multiple turnovers on defense, interceptions, strip sacks, things like that. I think this is going to be a good game to be a Miami Dolphins fan. I think it's going to get us right back on track, get us feeling good about the second half of the season. So I'll go 38-10 Miami Dolphins. My youngest also predicting a Dolphins victory. He has it a little bit closer. He said 21-17. And then my oldest is going with a 24-17 victory for the Miami Dolphins this week.
Are you disappointed in their lack of confidence?
I don't think they fully grasp scores yet and what's a good score and what's a bad score. I think they're just happy to get the win. And every once in a while, they'll just throw something random or crazy out there. I remember my youngest picked the Chiefs to win 41-17 or something like that. and I chastised him. I was like, that better not happen. Did you just jinx us? But yeah, I think they're just happy to get a win or a victory. I don't think they have any idea how good or bad the Las Vegas Raiders are. So I think they're just I think they saw that they beat the Jets and they were like, oh, they might be a good team. They just won. And I'm like, you guys don't understand how bad the Jets are. Somehow they're winning games, but they're bad. That team sucks.
What are the vibes in the house?
They're ready for Christmas. That's the vibes over here. No, they know the Raiders aren't going to stand a chance. They know what the Dolphins are going to do. But yeah, they're ready for Christmas.
We're all ready for Christmas. Get a couple Lego sets, really get things going here. But that is it. That is all we have for another Dolphins podcast. Did you know 1 out of 6 people who tune into the show do so on YouTube? You can watch the show on the 560 WQAM YouTube channel if you'd like to see our beautiful faces. Otherwise, you can continue listening to the show wherever you get your podcasts. This is it for at JMetal94, at mbrave13, and at Houts. Thank you so much for listening to another podcast from another Dolphins podcast. We will talk to you soon. And until then, fins up.
Fins up, baby.
Fins up.
Fins up.